Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our T-Bone Terrain, the 2017 GMC Terrain Denali that we started on last time. We're going to get it up on the frame rack and start pulling on all this stuff and see exactly what we need to change and what we can save. Let's get started. So we're going to lift our terrain up, put it up on its stilts so that we can start installing our lift kit and 44s. No, that's another episode. We're going to lift it up so we can take it off the lift. We can slide our clamps on so we can clamp it up. This is just a different style frame rack. We don't drive onto it, we drive over it. So the clamps go on the center, slide to the outsides. Just spin them around, we had them backwards for the last car that we used it on. So we'll line up the clamps with the clamp points on the pinch weld and get to pulling. These are provided by the manufacturer for the frame rack. This frame rack is old, tired, and really abused, but it gets the job done. The frame rack and I have a lot in common. Now we'll pull our wiring harness off of here before we end up turning our door and seat belt into a Bluetooth system. Pull our door gaskets off. Keep the front and the rear separated because they start to look the same and you don't notice till you have them halfway installed that they're not the right ones. So we'll keep the rear in the back of the car and the front in the front. Now we'll start pulling our pillar. And when you don't have the right tools, you make something work. So I have a pin through the center of the clamp. It's got a bunch of drive axle nuts on it to space it out, whatever length I need. And then there's a plate behind it that's pulling against the inside of this pillar. We could weld a plate on there and pull the outside, but chances are you're going to tear it. Pushing it from the inside, since there's that big opening in there, makes it pretty easy. Once we have a little tension on it, we can stress relieve it, get some of the kinks out of it. We're trying to get that inner piece straightened out and any adjacent panels. And we'll see how good this B-pillar looks when we're done. Just going to go a little at a time.
Just a little bit.
Stress relieve as we go. This process might be more stress relief for me than for the car, if we're really being honest. Now this bottom rocker is pushed in. It's actually probably in about 2 millimeters, but there's a bracket right on the other side that the ears of the bracket are bent, so I'm just putting a little tension on it. I'll straighten out those ears. The ears would probably have no damage if the car had been wearing hearing protection before the accident. Am I right, safety experts? We're going to do the same thing on the top half of it. This is above the floor. We have to get all this in the right place because if we don't have this rocker panel in the right spot, everything we mount to it is going to be wrong. It'll put the bottom of our doors too far in. So we'll take our time and get it in just the right spot. Now we're going to drill a hole. Then we're going to drill any size hole. Just got the unit bit on there. We're going to keep drilling until our bolt fits. Perfect. So we have a plate on the back so we can pull across the bottom. Our bolt goes through that and attaches to the chain. So now we'll be able to pull that whole center out. Our little C-shaped clamp that we had made up earlier wouldn't go low enough. So this allowed me to go a little bit further. We'll do a little more stress relieving. And now we're going to measure it to see if our pillar is still collapsed or if we got our measurements back. And our pillar is the right length, front to back, and up and down. So it's pretty close to where it belongs. We'll still need to go in and out a little bit. So we're going to clamp onto this pinch weld, give it a little pull. It's pushed over from where the front door pushed into it. But we need to get it straight because that lower panel is staying. So that's what I'm concentrating on, is that lower inner panel. Now we're going to make sure we're the right distance in and out. We'll measure our strikers. Then we'll measure our door checks. Measure both sides of that pillar because it could be twisted. So you could have measurements that are right on the striker and wrong on the door check bolts. That will make the hinges further in the back, which is definitely a problem we could have in this one. It's always good to check those. I didn't have those measurements, so I made them. I'll show you that in a second. So now we need to pull our rear striker down. When the door got hit, it kind of shoved it back and just mangled this striker mount. The hole in the bottom is about where the bolt should be, so it's pushed up a good 1/2 inch. So we're just going to pull it forward. Go a little at a time. This is not real thick stuff, so it'd be really easy to totally distort it. So with a little tension on there, we're just going to keep hammering it. We need to get it really straight. You don't want a lot of body filler around this because the door is constantly closing on that. It could crack. So we're going to keep it to a minimum if we can. Now we'll hammer out the upper hinge mount. It's a little collapsed from when the door went back, so we'll hammer it from the inside. Then we'll hammer the dimples out so that the hinge will fit flat. And here's the measurements that I was using. These are provided by Chief. There are a lot of measurements, but I like as many as possible, so we're going to take some more. This is where I got the rear door check mounts. Just made them off the good car. So we'll write them on our little cheat sheet here. Then we'll find some other ones. Basically give myself a description. Right door check to left door check. And then the measurement of whatever the tram says. There's a couple little X's. I measured off of those on the outer panels, side to side. And I measured where the lower panel stopped, side to side. Just gives me a bunch of locations to measure off of. Because once I cut it apart, there's no more measuring. We'll do our hinges. Now that we're done making up our own measurements, we're going to use both measurements, the ones we made up and the provided ones, to make sure our doors are square, make sure everything is where it belongs. Because I didn't eat my Wheaties this morning and I only want to put the doors on one time if possible. So now we're going to trim out some of the outer panel here. Put some tape on there just to give myself a guide. That's as far as the piece that we have on the parts car goes, so I don't want to cut past it. Just drilled all those out with a flat tip drill bit. And just to change the pace, we're going to grind the bottom ones out. Not sure why I chose two different methods, but it accomplishes the same thing. Doesn't go all the way through both panels and still gets the outer panel off. So we're going to trim this little piece off of here. It is buckled, so we're not going to be able to put the doors on and close them without straightening it or removing it. So we're just going to remove it. It has to come off anyway. Got our breaker in there. And the incorrect hammer, or so the YouTube comments tell me. But it works, so. I'll cut that piece off the back. Upset the tool experts again. They're going to have a rough day today. Safety experts are doing okay. I am wearing safety glasses. No gloves though. Now we got our favorite tool out. We're gonna cut ourselves a little window in here. And there's a little bracket on the inside. Pretty tough stuff, so we gotta cut around that. The reason we had to cut that little window in there is we need to be able to get to everything inside it, straighten it out. The top pinch weld was kind of rolled in, so I want to straighten that out before I pull this pillar out. Grind off our spot welds for our B pillar at the bottom. Yank that piece out of there, and you know. We'll pry our foam out of here. Grind off what's left of our welds. And we'll drill that little bracket out of here. Definitely tough stuff. It's high strength steel. Takes a while to get through. Can't go too fast with the drill or you'll burn up bits really quick. And we got our favorite tool out. Trim a little more of this out of here just to get this bracket out. And we'll measure our piece on the inside, measure our door opening one last time. Make sure nothing moved while we were straightening out the bottom of it. According to the measurements, everything's where it belongs. But if you've been here before, you know what it's time for. Our workout routine, or putting the doors on 100 times. I took the hinges off the doors. I'm going to try and use these hinges. Hopefully they're not bent, because they're kind of a pain to get to. The fender's off. It's real easy to get to them, but I don't want to take the fender off because it's already aligned. So we're going to try just putting the door up here on the old hinges. If it all fits, great. If not, we'll change the hinges. So we'll muscle the door up there, and we'll start the bolts. You want to start at the top, despite what I'm doing, because I'm too short to reach the top and hold onto the door at the same time. So we're going to get one bolt in the bottom just to hold it steady, and then I'll lift it up, and then get a bolt in the top. Once you finally get that bolt in the top, in more than half a thread, because it'll pull the threads out, you can relax a little bit, take a break, and then tighten the rest of them down. Now I did prime all the stuff I straightened down on the rocker, because when we put that B pillar up, we're never going to see that again. I didn't want any bare metal down there, even though GM thinks it's okay, I don't. So we primed it all, we put our weld through primer on, so we're ready to put our lower piece on there. Trip our latch. Closes ish. Woohoo! Those are bent. So our gap's a little too wide. Try the rear door, see if our luck is any better here. Should, we got new hinges. And it's 1,000 times easier to put on. Rear door, we just latch on the latch and start our bolts. Run them in there. Move the plug so you don't smash it. Then we'll try our doors. Looks like the striker needs to go in a little bit. Not a big deal. There is some adjustment there. On his rear door there happens to be a lot of adjustment after the accident.
since the holes that are in there are twice the size they're supposed to be.
So I changed the hinges. I didn't show you because it wasn't pretty, it wasn't graceful, it was awkward and disturbing. But it closed up our gap. There's still a little bit of adjustment. I just put them back where the original paint marks were, but every car is a little bit different. So we need to close this up a little bit to match the bottom. The bottom's actually where it belongs, and then all the door needs to go down just about 1 millimeter. So our gap's a little tight back here, but as soon as we close this up, that'll open up. All the rest of our gaps are okay. Here, come on, take a look. It should look more like the bottom down there. That one's the same. It's a little tight up there, so when we move the top forward, we'll open that up and that gap will be exactly the same. Then when we drop the door down just a little bit, we'll even that up right there. Hard to see, but it is off just a tiny bit. And our back gap looks good. Paint doesn't quite match. We're missing a pinstripe. These were bent, just as I suspected, so in the pile.
So now let's get our parts off. Everything's measured, so we can start cutting. Now, this outside panel goes underneath the roof skin. I don't feel like taking the whole roof skin off. It has hail damage on it anyway, so it's not like I'm gonna save it. So we're just gonna trim out a little piece of it. Just enough so we can see all of our welds to get that other panel out. Because there are some underneath it that don't go through the roof skin. Now we can start drilling all of our spot welds. Both of the door openings. We already drilled our 1/8 inch holes. These are just our 5/16. Pull the bottom of the rocker out. And now we can separate our panel. Maybe the tool experts would stop complaining if I used a brake job hammer for this. Sorry, my claw hammer was in my construction tool belt at home. We'll cut our front cut, the Sawzall, just a nice straight line. We're going to cut through the lower panel, the inner panel. We don't really care. I'm not going to use it anyway. I think I used enough off this parts car. And what are the odds I'm going to need any more pieces off of it? We'll cut our back. We're probably cutting a little bit more than we need, but I don't want to cut the inner pillar. Nothing worse than cutting through the parts that you need. But I kind of looked on the inside, I could see where it ended, so I just went a little bit further, decided to cut it there. I seem to always find the reciprocating saw blades that are exactly like my razor blades, dull and borderline useless. But I'm poor and I can't afford those fancy saw blades with teeth. One more cut on the bottom and the back. Our front's already cut from when I used that other piece. We use the grinding disc in the corners at the top and the bottom so we don't cut through the inner rocker, which is high strength steel and definitely going to chew up a lot of saw blades. I don't feel like burning up saw blades. I'll raise it up. Make it a little easier to work underneath it. I'm short, but I'm not that short. I believe it was in 2014 they stopped using the snap-in sill plates, so we have a few extra holes that we're going to have to weld up in here where the old plastic sill plates used to snap in. They were pretty useless anyway. Nobody was stepping on a sill that was 1.5 inches wide and sloped outward. So now instead of using our breaker, I'm just going to hit the bottom of this with an air chisel with a hammer end on it. Just the vibration will knock most of these spot welds out, or that's my theory anyway. Looks like we missing just one here. Give it a couple more hits. There we go. Basically just looks like a hammer end. And we're hitting that piece of the rocker that we're not going to use anyway, so if it flattens it out, we don't care. Here we're still going to have to go back to the old breaker way and incorrect hammer. Which, now you can see why I use it. Because you straighten it out as you go. But sometimes the breaker does a little damage. So you just hammer it flat. We'll work our way all the way around the opening. And it's almost ready to come off. We need to get rid of the structural foam. You know, the stuff that really holds it together. In case those spot welds fail. So just heat it up enough to release the foam. You don't want to pull on it too much, it will buckle the metal. And there is a buckle right in front of the pillar there. That's supposed to be there. I learned that after straightening one out. So we'll pull the outer panel off, and now we can see the inner panel. You can see it's a different color. That's actually the different types of steel. Probably made in different places. That's probably why they're different colors. I don't think they color code things for me, but I'd like to think they do. So that's actually about 3 pieces, but it's sold as an assembly, and it's not serviceable. So we got a few spot welds to drill out at the top here, and that's why we had to take the piece out the way we did in order to get to all those welds. This inner panel, that is a separate piece. I can take that off, but that's extra work. So we're going to take it off as one big assembly. And drill all of our spot welds. We'll grind the inside. And there is 2 bolts. Wish they had bolted more of it in. And we'll hit it with our favorite tool, with the hammer bit. We're hammering on the stuff that we don't need around the parts that we're trying to save, just to break it all free. Getting a breaker in there would be really difficult, so as many as we can free up this way, the better. I could get a breaker in here, but I don't want to rob myself of the quality air chisel time. Looks like they're all free, except for one. Got it. So we do have some more foam inside this panel, so we're going to heat that up. We're going to use our breaker as a pry bar. Everything's a pry bar if you're brave enough, despite what the warning labels say. Put a little tension on it and heat it up. And it'll pop off. So our bottom's free. The top is free, but it's all kind of wedged in there. So we just gotta rip it out of there. I win. And all our pieces are out. Now we can unclamp the Terrain. In order to get to the clamps, you just open the doors. It exposes the pinch weld. car jumps up because it's happy to be free again. The ones on the other side. There's bolts on the bottom that keep the clamps from sliding side to side, and once upon a time there were even bolts on the clamp that held them onto the frame rack. There's one right there. That's the only one of the 16. We'll slide our clamps off of here. In case you were wondering, I think these things weigh about 50 pounds a piece. And they like fingers, so you got to keep your fingers away from them or they'll eat them. This side's a little rusty. Frame rack's getting rustier. I use it less and less these days. Everything now just needs to be replaced or totaled. So we'll lift it up, take the stands out.
So that's all we have time for today. Next time we come back, we're going to get our doors off and we'll start putting in our center post. Now, if I really wanted to be a hack, I could just throw the outer panel up there and hide everything in there, because our doors do line up and everything fits and nobody would ever know until the next accident, and then they'd find out the hard way. So in the interest of doing things the right way, we're going to put in our entire center post. And we have to put the entire thing in. It can't be sectioned. It's ultra high strength steel, and the repair procedure is to replace it complete. I could replace just the outer panel, but it would require me drilling out all these spot welds as opposed to just these other ones here for the inner piece. So it's a little less work to actually put more parts in. It's not that I can't straighten them, it's just that it's not the right way. So when people say I change too many parts, there's a reason I do it, and that's the reason. So we'll do all that when we get back, but that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Bonus pile footage. I don't throw everything away. Actually, I don't throw anything away until the job is done, because you never know if there's a clip or something that you're going to need on one of those little pieces you threw out, and once it's gone, it's gone. So you just hang on to everything till the job is done. You're sure the job is done, or at least you think the job is done. But if it's not done, you'll find out as soon as you throw the stuff away.